I've never practiced this piece before, and I'm gonna try to learn it in 7 days. This is Rachmaninoff's Moment Musical, Opus 16, number 4 in E minor. Now, although I've never practiced this piece, I've been a fan of it for years. It's always been a piece that I've wanted to learn. I specifically love Lugansky's recordings. He actually has 2 up on YouTube. I'll link them down below. Now, I'm probably going to regret saying this in a few days, but I think this is probably not one of Rachmaninoff's more difficult piano pieces. And I mean that more in reference to the composition itself and the musicality rather than the technique. I don't have any markings on it, just got this book, and it looks pretty scary. There are notes everywhere. But when you look closer, the melody is actually pretty simple. Part of the reason I'm filming this is just to show you guys this is really how I work from the ground up in a piece of music. When I don't know it, I really try to, even from the very beginning, look at the main structure of the piece. This is what many people are going to get focused on because it's the fastest moving line, but it's not the main musical content. So most importantly, I'm trying to find the main harmonies and the main musical content. All of the running notes and the sextuplets that are found throughout the piece are texture. It sounds like the whole thing is in a whirlwind. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Chopin's Winter Wind Etude, for those that are familiar with that. I tell my students this over and over and over, but you want to establish fingering very early on in the piece. Particularly this 5-3-5-3, I'm not a fan of. It helps to keep in mind that a lot of these fingerings are written in by editors and not by the composer. But even if it is written by the composer, particularly by a person like Rachmaninoff, with such large hands, we have to think that things might be different. But in this case, I really think you're going to lose a lot of strength if you try to jump to a pinky. I would do 2-3, 2-4. It's much stronger. You can get a lot more power this way. 2-4. Now, even if you decide to change it, you can always go back and erase. It's better to put something down than nothing. I'm gonna look at this monstrosity. If you're having trouble deciding what should happen at the beginning, like I am right now, sometimes I like to work backwards. So we have this one measure, this one measure. This is the basic idea. So I'm looking at the tail end of the measure, transitioning back into that pattern. So this I am happy with, and I'm just going to go ahead for good measure and write in the rest of that. Now let's back up to the previous sextuplet in very little tiny cells, trying to speed it up and make sure that it works physically. And so now in slow motion, now this might look a little tedious, but I really want to spend time on this because it's prevalent throughout. And that's why I'm already in the first 10-15 minutes of practice. I've established 2 different alternate fingerings which might work, and I'm going to practice them interchangeably to see which one locks in. And the process for this following measures is exactly the same, you guys. I'm just going to kind of look at this section here and try to figure out some left-hand fingerings. Okay, so this is about 25 minutes of work. Now I'm going to try to play through the first page slowly, see what happens. Alright, so it obviously needs work, it obviously needs to get faster, but at least I have the basic concept of it down so far. Okay, so here we are at day 2 of learning Rachmaninoff's Moment Musical in E minor. Today I was actually able to play through the entire piece slowly, and most importantly, I went through the entire thing and wrote down some fingerings. I even changed some, circled some things. I have a general rule for myself that if I make the same mistake more than twice, I try to make a note of it. So yeah, went through the entire piece, took about an hour, a little more than an hour earlier this morning, and kind of went through it slowly. I decided to cross out this alternate fingering because I think 2-3 works better. I thought 3-4 would work better, but you know, waking up, trying it again the next day, I realized no, 2-3 is definitely faster. Honestly, at this point, it's just a lot of slow practice, hand separate practice still. In the coming days, as that gets more comfortable, I'm going to work more on polishing, musicality, phrasing, speeding it up, transitions, things like that. So it's another day and it's back to more practice. The opening theme, kind of the main subject of the music, is flowing a little bit better today, so I'm trying to focus a little bit more on these sequences. I know from past experience playing other Rachmaninoff pieces that some of these sequences are actually the difficulty in playing the piece, even though it's not technically difficult. To give you an idea of what I mean, I'm talking about sequences like this in both the right and the left hand. And again, it's not technically difficult, but what makes it difficult is that it's constantly changing. And when you think you've latched onto a pattern, like this measures the same twice, this measures the same twice, and then it just goes off and is continuously changing. And in the right hand, it's always switching up. So you have... And when you're going at a really fast speed, sometimes you forget, is it the middle voice that moves, or the top voice, or the bottom voice? Because there are 4 voices here. So same idea. Practice them block, so you can see which voice is moving. And then after doing that kind of practice, what I like to do is sort of test my memory in small chunks. So I'll play like a measure at a time or a half measure at a time. Even though I'm not necessarily trying to play this memorized after a week, just by trying to memorize it and attempting to, then I will learn the structure and the harmonies of the piece even better. So it's New Year's Eve and it is day 4 of this 7-day challenge. I've identified a couple of the problem spots, marked them with stars. One of them here, some of the left hand passage here. I always mix up like wanting to play a 4 on the 3 or vice versa. Also, having listened back to some of the recordings, I realized I can do a little bit better job with phrasing and dynamics, maintaining a crescendo through this phrase right here and keeping the direction in a phrase like here. Usually what happens, the reason I write that is it begins to sound vertical, like all of these G's will sound the same. I don't want them to. I always want it to be moving in some direction. So while the beginning is still not at the speed that I wanted, it is getting faster, partly when I was practicing the other day with very lifted fingers. I was not just lifting them, but trying to land very much on the tip of the finger for this specific sound, and also to gain speed. When I'm trying to go very quickly in this kind of a quick passage, if you look at the comparison between my first day probably a little bit more flat-fingered, which is okay in some circumstances, but not when you want this kind of speed and clarity. So I really wanted to tuck in and minimize the movement so that the overall effect can be faster. I'm gonna try to go at a little bit more of a medium tempo today. Marking the places where I keep messing up with stars. I had a red pencil, I lost it, need to order another one. Part of the goal of starring these particular sections is also trying to prepare for my practice tomorrow, where I'm mostly gonna go over these starred sections. After playing it for 4 days, some of the parts are coming into focus. They're not really a problem, and I don't want to waste time. I want to go straight to the area that has the issue. Well, a week has gone by. It went by very fast. So today is my last day, and as promised, I will record this entire piece in its entirety, mistakes and all, for you to see. Now, the point of this is just to show realistically how much can actually be learned in a week. What can you expect to learn with good practice habits? There are doubtless musicians who can learn a lot faster than me, so I'm not claiming to be an expert on this by any means, but I have learned a few things along the way, and hopefully you find this helpful. Alright, so here it is, Rachmaninoff Moment Musical number 4, Opus 16, and it's gonna be what it's gonna be.